All right, today we're talking about how to scale up a financial services firm. My guest today is Jim Dunlop. He's got lots of experience in that area. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show, and every week we have smart CEOs and founders and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. And if you check out the archives, we've got Netflix and Grubhub and Gusto, Kinko's, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, lots of great episodes for you to check out. So go check that out. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise 25, where we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We are the easy button for any company to launch and run a podcast. And if you want to learn about how we can do that or how we can help you with that, you can go to our website, which has been recently refreshed with lots of great resources on there, rise25.com. And or you can email our team at support@rise25.com. All right, I'm excited to have our guest here today. His name is Jim Dunlop. He is a certified financial planner and managing partner with Advent Partners, which is a wealth management and financial planning firm based out of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And he's got over 20 years of experience in the financial services industry. And what's really interesting is, he's the host of the podcast, You Can't Take It With You, which we have been fortunate to work with him on. And so a big part of his why is helping people who have been fortunate enough to accumulate a bit of wealth to figure out what they're going to do with it. And so I think that's a really interesting approach, the way that he does the work that he does. And we're going to talk about that focus. And of course, talk also about scaling up his wealth management practice over the last 20 years, even doing acquisitions and how that has gone. So Jim, excited to have you here today. As always, I love to get to know people a little bit more, what their background was like. And you started at 13 to 14 years old, washing dishes at a summer camp. I worked at some day camps, not overnight camp, it was a day camp. I think back in seriously, probably the most fun, one of the most fun jobs out there. And you actually ended up becoming a counselor all the way through high school and college and everything. So you stayed with this summer camp for quite a while. But take me back to young 13, 14-year-old Jim. Washing dishes, not the most glamorous role on his summer camp, but what did you like about being there?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And what was exciting for me personally was this. This was a camp that I had gone to as a kid from the time I was very young, and I just loved it there. And I always admired the staff that worked there. I thought as soon as I was old enough to do that, I would. And so the first job you can get when you're a kid in high school is support staff, and that's doing the stuff that nobody else wants to do, like washing dishes and taking the garbage out and those kinds of things. So I got a job washing dishes the first summer there. Found a job in the office the next summer, and spent a lot of my and it's an overnight away camp, so it's pretty cool. I was gone 6 days a week. I get to one day off on the weekend to go home and see my family over the summer. But spent my summers there all through high school and a good chunk of college. Not all of college. I did some other stuff in there, and I actually met my wife there. And
cool.
And interestingly enough, my daughter, who's now a college age student, has been a counselor there. She was a counselor there this year, and she had been the camp lifeguard this summer before. So it's something that even my kids love it, and I won't be surprised if my son ends up there someday.
It's such a great experience. I was just thinking about it as you're saying that. I just went to see a friend who's been a friend of mine since we were 14 years old, and we worked at a summer camp together. It was the same summer camp that I also went to as a kid. And now my kids, I don't live close to where I grew up, but my kids have gone to the same summer camp every summer. And now my oldest last summer was a counselor at that camp. So,
Okay.
it repeats itself, and
That's
it's
right.
Such a great experience. You were also involved in your church, got involved in babysitting through your church.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that community.
So, and I think it's worth mentioning that the camp that is a Camp Nawakwa, just outside of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. But Camp Nawakwa is affiliated with the denomination of the church that I grew up in. and the churches that my wife and I go to now. So. Which is Lutheran, and so was very active in my church, and still to this day, a different church, but that that connection, because I was there in that community throughout middle school and high school. I got asked to babysit kids, part because I worked at the camp, and part because people knew who I was and knew who my family was, and so that, when it wasn't summertime, I made extra money doing that as well.
Yeah, and this all circles back to kind of your focus with the wealth management practice. But you ended up getting into doing year-round fundraising for the summer camp.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because I mean, from dishwashing to year-round fundraising, very different, even if you're doing it for the same camp.
Yeah, my qualification was, I think, that I loved the camp, and I think getting out of college, that they were looking for somebody to do that kind of work year round, and it sounded very interesting to a 22-year-old, and I took that job and did that for just under 2 years, and it was a great job. But at some point, I hate to say this, you have to grow up, and I don't think it was a grown-up job, at least not in my mind, and so I had an internship one summer in financial services, and the internship didn't go very well, actually. And
which is funny, because you end up having, to this day, a relationship with that financial services. So the internship didn't go well,
yeah.
And from that experience, you're like, I don't know, this industry isn't for me. And 20 years later, you still have a relationship through them.
Well, what I didn't understand at the time, what I understand now is, companies hire interns because they want to see if they'd be good employees for them when they graduate college. And that company was much more interested in me than I was interested in them. And they kind of pursued me for 2 years, and finally got to the point where, like, it's probably, maybe this is the grown-up job I'm looking for. I don't know, but I'll try it. Mm-hmm. My wife and I were married, but we didn't have any kids, and she was working. She still is. But so I was like, I could take a risk here. If this doesn't go well, I'll come up with something else after a while before we grow up and have kids. And I started in 2003, and now 23 years later, I'm still there doing that work.
Something switched, though, from the internship. And so maybe the answer is that just interns don't get the sexiest job responsibilities. They're like, go file this stuff, right? I was an intern,
Yeah, right.
So it's looking back on it now, I realize that, it's any internship, you're not going to really get a true picture of what, being in the paid roles are going to be. Would you agree with that?
I think so. And I think, too, for me, my internship, I was paired with a slightly older advisor. He wasn't, he's probably in his late 20s at the time, but he seemed old to me.
Yeah.
And he was not having a good time of it. This type of work can be very entrepreneurial, where your income is dependent on the clients you bring in, and he was not having a lot of good success with that, and that had to be very frustrating for him, because it wasn't going well. And I don't think he's in the industry any longer. I haven't heard from him in years, but I had a front row to that, and I thought, why would I want to have a job like that?
Yeah.
But I do love the entrepreneurial aspect of it. I do like working for myself, and being a business owner, and that was not something that I ever grew up thinking that I wanted or that would be helpful for me. But once I got into it, it was clear to me that was the right place for me and my personality. I'm not really, I don't know. I've never really had a boss in 23 years other than myself. And so, I don't know that I could start now.
Yeah. Yeah. So you go on, you kind of go out on your own, I guess, right? But it was under the Thrivent banner. And then you had this interesting situation where 2019, 2020, which we all know what happened right around then.
Yep.
Thrivent kind of undergoes a change. And so you start Advent around that time period.
Mhm.
Looking back on it now, what was it like starting a new initiative, a new business, basically, while the world was shutting down during COVID?
Yeah, well, great question. Thrivent was interested in creating an independent wealth management platform as a way to attract additional people or additional financial advisors to the organization. And so they took a group of us from across the country and launched um, what was called the Thrivent Advisor Network. And we were all invited to take our clients and build our own identities and brands and our own businesses. And they would provide that RIA back office infrastructure that you need in this business and give us a great deal of autonomy to build brands and niches around what were important to us. And so that was very, very appealing to me. Being even in their under their banner, we were independent operators, running our own businesses underneath their banner, but we were still independent practitioners. And then in the midst of that, we started this transition in 2019, and we were going to have a date in June of 2020 where we were going to take all of our clients and move them from the old legacy systems and move them into the independent wealth management platform, which meant taking from their clients' investments from the Thrivent side and putting it under Fidelity. In this case, we used Fidelity as our custodian. And that was going to be great. The clients were going to sign all their papers. They would flip a switch in the middle of the night. Their accounts would get moved from here to there. When we came up with that plan, it was late 2019, early 2020, and then the pandemic set in.
Best laid plans,
right?
Yeah.
And we literally had cases and cases of UPS overnight envelopes. We had to have all of our clients sign all new account paperwork, which we had intended just to sit down with them and go through.
Yeah.
And instead, what happened is if I was meeting with you to sign that paperwork tomorrow, we were doing it over Zoom most likely, or the telephone. I was going to overnight. I dropped off piles of envelopes at UPS every day. Clients would get that. And we did all that remotely. And it was painful. We were successful. We got it done. We had to adapt tremendously. And my team, who was helping me in all this, of course, for a while in the state of Pennsylvania, you couldn't come into the office if you weren't a frontline worker.
Yeah.
And so we were all trying to do this remotely. And I would be in the office by myself, but talking to my team on Zoom. And they're saying, oh, you need this. And can you print this and mail this? And so it was an interesting time. To do all that.
Scary at the time, but worked out in retrospect. So that's good. Let's talk a little bit about, obviously with your roots working for the summer camp that had connections to your church and your involvement in the church. It makes sense that you would, focus on that as a demographic, that you would, kind of hang your shingle as a faith-based wealth management professional. But talk a little bit about that decision and what that's meant in terms of, the types of conversations that you have with your clients and the types of clients that come in the door. Because, business owners make a million different decisions about how you want to run your business. And that's an important one.
Yeah. So I grew up, again, as I said, inside of Thrivent, and that Thrivent was always a faith-based financial services company. It was organized as a fraternal benefit society, which meant it was not for profit. It was a kind of an interesting business arrangement, still is. So for a long time, those are the types of people we worked with. And when we got our independence, so we could do whatever we want, still made the conscious decision that our best clients were people who their faith was an important part of their life. For some clients, it means that all their financial decisions, they look at it through a faith lens. For others, not necessarily, but their faith is still an important component of their life. And so it's something that we think about in their finances. And then there's some clients that just don't look at their faith that way. And that's fine. I don't think it's something that I think I've said this to people. We want to find the right people. We don't want to bang the drum too loud. And in that we don't want to be working with people of faith just for the sake of working with people with faith. We want to make sure that all of our values are aligned with them. And but work that's always been important to me is work around generosity, and charitable
and making charitable donations and things like that, to the point where you even call your podcast the "You Can't Take It With You" podcast, which is an interesting choice for a podcast. Yeah. And you say that came from basically years of conversations with clients, and that was a topic that came up over and over again.
Yeah, in financial planning, we call it charitable planning, but just this idea of doing something greater than yourself. And I used to say to a lot of clients, I still say it, like, you can't take it with you. You've saved up this money. You have more than you need. What's the plan? And let's figure that out. And maybe you want to do great things for your family. Maybe you want to do great things for a church or local community organizations that are near and dear to your heart. Whatever that is, let's help figure that out.
Yeah.
Those are the conversations we lean into and love the most, in that you can't take it with you. I'm not, as a good financial advisor or even a bad financial advisor, I'm not going to let you run out of money. I'm not going to allow you to make bad decisions, or I'm certainly going to guide you away from rocky shoals that are going to lead to disaster and retirement. So what I want to do is help you think beyond that, though. If we've done our jobs well, there's something left over, hopefully something meaningful. What do we want to have happen? And if we don't make a plan, that's okay. However, perhaps the government gets an unfair share in terms of, if we're not going to be tax efficient, if we're not going to think about some strategies and opportunities to do nice things for the communities we live in, for the organizations that we care about, or the people we love, the government has a good plan in place for you already. And we want to avoid that. We want to encourage people to be thinking more broadly. And so those are the conversations that we're most passionate about and that we love having. But it starts with this idea of, hey, you have more than enough here.
Yeah.
You can't take it with you. So what should we do?
Yeah. And I'm curious to know, I mean, you really lean into these conversations, but for some people, that's a very difficult conversation to have. So what do you say to clients that you work with that struggle to have that conversation, or to even think about that? Think about the inevitable. We're all going to die, and what are we going to do with our resources that'll happen to our resources after we die?
Yeah, I think it's not always the easiest conversation, and some people aren't equipped to have it. Some people don't want to talk about it, and that's okay too. However, I think any good planner is going to be having those conversations and say, look, by the way, I hope you live a long and prosperous life. Right. And if you do, great, here's one possible outcome. But also from a planner, like, if you don't live long and prosperously, or something terrible happens much sooner than you would expect, let's also have a plan for that. So those conversations are inherent in any financial plan, of like, hey, what if you die old? What if you die young? Or somewhere in between? And so I think these kinds of conversations around generosity become a natural extension. And by the way, you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait till you die to give it away. I said you can't take it with you, and I mean that. And does that mean we wait till the end and whatever's left over we give? Fine, we can talk about that. Or are there things that we can be doing now that make that make the world a better place? And what are they? And how and maybe it's helping getting your grandkids through college. Because then they don't have student loans. Mom and dad, your adult children don't have debt. Maybe we could help in that regard. Or maybe there's something really neat happening in your community that you want to be a part of. And how can we meaningfully contribute to that?
And it's so beautiful when you see the person who's the benefactor get to benefit from that. Like, I remember when I was in law school, there was this scholarship that was a meaningful amount of money. It was not a huge amount of money that was awarded to people once they were in law school, who'd made big contributions. And I was one of, 50 people or something, 30 people or something who got this scholarship. And the the people who gave it were in their 80s at the time, and we all like shuffle into this conference room, and there they are sitting down in front, and they actually had a disabled son who they'd also named it after, and their whole point was that, our disabled son can't go to law school, can't contribute like you all can, so we're going to give this all to all of you. And just to see their faces, to see them soaking this in, to see the people that they'd given these contributions to was really meaningful. So it was nice to be a part of that.
The clients that are the most generous, I think, delight in the generosity more sometimes or oftentimes than the recipient.
Yeah.
They're erupting with joy when they do great things. I've had, whether it's for their family or whether it's for an organization or both, they take great delight in that.
That's cool. That's great. It's so special for you to be able to professionally be able to do something where you get to play a role in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jim, this has been great. It's great hearing your backstory and everything. Where can people go to learn more about you and Advent?
I would say go to Advent Partners FP, as in financial planning. AdventPartnersFP.com is our website. I think that's a good launching off place, or can'ttakeitwithyou.com.
That's great. Oh, I completely forgot. I'm going to add this one more thing. Is you actually acquired another financial planning firm, which is an interesting approach after everything you've been through, after the pandemic, launching into the pandemic and everything. So talk a little bit about that, what that's like, bringing in another financial planning firm and why it's important, particularly in your industry.
Yeah, we combined forces with another local firm, and it's just not quite 100 days old yet, to be honest. So it's still new for us, and but it's been so far an incredible blessing for our team and for our clients. And I say it in this way. We are probably, by combining, we can be the long-term succession plan for the two original principals of the other when they're ready to retire down the road. However, in the meantime, they're joining our team. We're bringing our practices together, and they bring a tremendous amount of expertise around business retirement plans for business owners. They've done a lot. They have a good chunk of business around that and expertise and experience that we are excited to bring onto our team. And a great background in tax planning. And so they bring some really incredible gifts that our clients get to benefit from. We have a really broad team when it comes to doing financial planning and some tremendous, when I say broad, depth. We've got a really good team that does some incredible ongoing work every day for our clients. And so their clients get to benefit from us. And so ideally, there have been hiccups and there will be more, I'm sure. And it's been a really great match for us and for them.
Excellent. Jim, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.